This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. In-depth conversations with people who are making a difference in the lives of others here and around the world. Culture is at the heart of who you are. Know your culture, find yourself on Open Door with Vince Robinson.
Grand dawning, great rising, Cleveland, Ohio, and the rest of planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest this morning is someone who I share the distinction of having been born on the same exact day. I think we were born maybe 12, 11 hours apart, but we entered planet Earth on the same day. And I'm not going to tell you how long ago, but it has been a minute. But she's someone that I met years ago, and I am happy to be finally having this conversation. Her name is Sandy Scott, also known as Sandra Holloway Scott, and she is a media professional, and I'm going to give her a chance to tell us all about that. But I always have to start off with this, maybe not, but she was born and raised in Cleveland. How is it, and how does it feel to be a lifelong Clevelander, if you were?
Actually, it's wonderful. I love it. And people are sometimes surprised, I think, to hear me say that. But I was born and raised in Cleveland at City Hospital, which is the now Metro Health Hospital. And I still go there. I do respect and like what they do. I think they're a hospital with heart, and they don't heal just with medical knowledge. They heal with respect and love. I've been treated very well there.
Okay. And have you spent most of your early life in the Lee Harvard area?
No. Well, no, not exactly. Actually, when I was a baby, we lived several places, all on the east side, but more like I think we lived at East 63rd and Woodland, maybe close to the time that I was born in that area. Then we moved to like East 83rd and Gill. That's where the Fresh Fest is like at. All the houses back there have been torn down pretty much. But, we lived at East 83rd and Gill. I went to Kinsman Elementary, which was at East 79th and Kinsman. But, of course, it's just an empty lot now. And went on to, like, 5 elementary schools. It was Kinsman, Lafayette, Boulevard, Gracemount, and Harvey Rice. I think I missed one in there somewhere. But 5 elementary schools, Alexander Hamilton at East 130th and Kinsman. And then I went to John Adams, Rebels for Life, John Adams, and on to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, where I started my road to journalism and then graduated from Cleveland State University with a degree in mass communications.
Okay. So obviously you did things within the realm of mass communications. What was the reason that you chose that as a path?
Well, I chose it as a path because I kind of negotiated with my dad. I showed an aptitude for writing and reading very early on, and also for math. So I know when I was a young lady watching TV, I'd be 4 or 5 years old, I was mesmerized by television. I loved television, loved it. Used to watch a lot of black and white movies, a lot of Westerns, some of everything. But I really could deal with any genre. But I loved musicals. I loved big films. And I got probably the love of some of that from my parents. And they loved music also. But I think communications and mass communication and journalism writing just suited me. But the thing is, I told my dad once, hey, I want to be a secretary. My dad says, you're too smart for that. Try something else. And I was like 4 or 5 discussing this with him. And then I said, hey, I want to be a stewardess. He said, no, that's just a flying waitress. You don't do that. And then I said, I didn't really want to be a doctor. And I didn't want to be a doctor because I just thought I didn't want to have the power of life and death in my hands. I didn't want that. I think I'm strong enough to handle it. I just didn't want it. Didn't want to be involved with blood. I like making people feel better. So it'd been more natural for me to be a nurse. But just would negotiate with my dad back and forth. And then when I said I wanted to be an accountant, he said, yeah, that's great. That's smart. You're good with math. And then when it actually got close to about 14 years old, my father, one of his coworkers told him, oh, your daughter doesn't want to be an accountant. It's really hard work and blah, 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 blah. But be perfectly honest, the coworker didn't want his African American friend and coworker to have a daughter who grew up to be a CPA. That's what the problem was. And my father didn't realize what his coworker was doing. So he said, I don't know, that might be too hard to feel for you. I said, I don't think so. I really can handle numbers and stuff. And so we got off of that. And then I said, I want to be a lawyer. My father said, great, that's perfect. That's perfect for you. He said, you know how to deduce things, you're logical, you're intellectual, you know how to research things, blah, 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 blah. But then as I got older, I just had the passion for words and not just in a legal and literal sense. I liked music and I liked writing and I liked lyrics and stuff like that. So I told my dad, I think I want to go into journalism. He says, you know what? I think that would be a great fit for you. He says, yes, go to school and be a journalist. And I said, okay, that's what I want to do. And I really wanted to focus on being a reporter, not an anchor woman, but a reporter, because I wanted to be out in the streets talking to the people and learning what they felt and what their issues were and what their hopes and dreams were. I really like talking to people.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, and I'm just taking into account that we were born on the same day, and you know, some folks are into astrology, some aren't. I just happen to be into astrology. So one of the things that I've learned about us is that communication is one of our strengths. So it doesn't come any surprise to me that that's what you ended up choosing. And the other thing that I find interesting is that I majored in communication, but it was telecommunications, which at Kent State University was basically broadcasting. So they called it telecommunications instead of communications. When you think of telecommunications now, you think about telephone communications, but I only took one journalism class, but I ended up becoming a broadcast journalist. Now, the difference between you and me is that I had the experience of talking to people on the street as a radio news reporter, but I wanted to be an anchor person. So, in our pre-interview, you indicated that there was somebody else with the name Sandy Scott. And that person was someone that got confused with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was another guy named Vince Robinson.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
That's actually how I met you.
Okay.
You came down to WEWS News Channel 5 at East 30th and Euclid, and you applied to be a reporter. And I believe I actually saw you coming in through the editing department, which is the department I worked in, to go have your interview. And I remember saying hi to you and whatever. And I think you told me your name. I told you my name, but I didn't know you. And then they announced Vince Robinson is coming to Channel 5, WEWS, as a reporter. I was so excited because I thought it was the young, handsome guy that I met walking through the editing department who had an interview. But it wasn't. It was another Vince Robinson who came from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I was flabbergasted when he arrived, and it wasn't you.
You think you were flabbergasted? You saw me after the moment that I was introduced to this other guy who got the job that I was trying to interview for. So
I was just like, what?
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, with us being born on the same day, and we just found out last week that we were born in the same year. We knew we were born in the same day.
Right.
But I had no idea that we were born in the same year. So our whole meeting has been kind of cosmic. It really has.
It really has. It's
really
amazing to look back. And, you know, I don't remember much about that day. And to be perfectly transparent with you, now it's coming back to me seeing you there. But all I remember was that introduction. And, you know, Dick Tuninger was supposed to be there. He didn't show up. So Bob Olive was the designated person. And Bob Olive is the one that introduced me to the other guy. And at that point, I'm just blank because I was, you know, I can't say that I was actually happy to meet someone that day.
Job that's supposed to be your job.
Because I called the station one day and I asked for the news director, and his response was, "Oh, you're in town?" And I didn't know why he said that. but then after the fact, it's like, oh, okay, that's what happened. But anyway, long story, we can make it short, but that's something that I will never forget. And I'm glad you remember what you remembered.
Right. And because I was waiting with bated breath because I said, wow, this is a sharp guy. He's handsome and he speaks well and he's going to be a great addition to the staff. And then when they said Vince Robinson got the job, I was so excited. And then it wasn't you. I'm like, what?
Yes.
So I don't know. And then as for my doppelganger, there was a young lady at the Call and Post recently, like in this last decade. And her name was Sandy Scott. And she worked at the Call and Post as one of the writers or something like that. And they posted a staff picture of a lot of the people who were writing and being editors at the Call and Post. And when that issue came out, people started calling me saying, I saw you in the Call and Post. I saw you in the Call and Post. Congratulations on your new job. I'm like, guys, it's not me. But they said, but it's Sandy Scott. I said, it's not me. They said, they had your picture. I'm like, it's not me. And then I got a copy of that Call and Post and I looked at it. And dang, the name didn't match up with the right picture, but there was a lady in there in the middle that looked like me to me, but it wasn't me. And I just said, whoa, that is crazy. And that's why sometimes I use my maiden name, Holloway, to differentiate myself from other Sandy Scotts. And there are more. I actually even met a Sandy Scott. I was then the president of the Cleveland Association of National Black Journalists. And I was the president. That would have been somewhere around 1998, 99, 2000. And we were having an event at Jillian's, the one in Cleveland Heights, I believe. I believe it was the one in Cleveland Heights. Mm-hmm. But it could have been the one in the Flats because I really don't remember that. But we were having an event at Jillian's. And she came in. She was a beautiful lady. And I believe she may have had long braids, and I had braids at the time. So I'm walking around and I see her, and I could tell by the way she looked, she was looking for something. And then she walks right up to me and says, hello, my name is Sandy Scott. Can you tell me where the Cleveland Association of Black Journalists are meeting? And I immediately started looking around because I thought somebody was pranking me. And she was looking at me, reacting weird. I said, hey, I don't mean to be weird, but could I see your driver's license? She said, sure. So she pulls it out, and it said, Sandra M. Scott. But I'm Sandra E. Scott. And so then I pulled out my license and showed her. I said, look. She was like, oh, my goodness. No wonder you're looking at me like I'm crazy. I said, out of all the people in this room, you walk up to me and ask me, where's this event at? And you were in the right place, but just not in the right area. And your name is Sandy Scott? I thought somebody was pranking me.
Wow.
So we laughed about that. That was crazy.
So
that was crazy. So
two Sandra Scotts that you've...
two Sandra Scotts, right. Mm-hmm. So that I actually met, and they were all in Cleveland. I don't think they both necessarily have been in Cleveland their whole lives, but yeah. Okay. So that was crazy.
Well, while I was at Kent State, there was an instructor on the faculty whose name was Vince Robinson. And, wow. And there are a couple of other Vince Robinsons that are in Cleveland right now. I think the other guy lives in Lakewood or something, but he's not melanated, so to speak.
Okay.
So, right. So no doppelganger there, just someone who happens to share the same name. Sandy, I want to talk to you about how your career got off the ground. That you said you went to, I believe you said Miami University and Cleveland State University.
Correct.
And so after you left Cleveland State University, I'm assuming that you jumped into the frying pan. So I want you to tell us about that when we return. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is Sandy Holloway Scott. Sandy Scott to some, and just Sandy to others. We'll be right back on this Bird and Belcar Community Radio Station, 95.9 FM, WOVU. Back in a minute.
At CMSD, we believe in creating access to services, programs, and opportunities. Every day, we strive to provide innovative learning experiences where passions lead to career paths. From trade education to early college courses, the possibilities are profound, empowering every scholar to discover their path and achieve their dreams. The future of CMSD starts here.
This message has been brought to you by Cleveland Metropolitan School District and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
Hi, I'm Candace Wilder from Signal Cleveland, and you're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson and my conversation with media professional Sandy Scott. And before we took the break, I wanted to get some insight from her on how her career began. So take it from there.
All right. Well, my career began because I graduated from Cleveland State. And at the time, I was working at the Cleveland State Registration Center. That's where students sign up for their courses. But I could only keep that job if I was a registered student. And I had just finishing up my BA. I wasn't about to get into grad school yet. I wanted to step my foot into the real world. So I sent out letters to Channel 3, Channel 5, and Channel 8. Channel 19 did not exist at the time. And I had been associated with the Black Media Workers of Cleveland, going to some of their events and stuff as a college student. And as I was making my search to jobs, and I applied at some local radio stations as well, but only one company, and that was Channel 3, I believe. I think it was Channel 3, sent me a letter back responding to my resume. And that letter was sent to me by Leon Bibb, and I hate to say I don't have it anymore, but he sent me a letter saying that they received my resume and they were interested in my credentials, but they didn't have a position for me at the time. And they thanked me for applying, but it was basically like saying, we got your information, but no thanks. But I commend them on answering my query because the other stations did not. I only got a response as far as TV stations go from Channel 3 with Leon Bibb. And then I was getting some bites from little radio stations, like one in Peoria, Illinois. I'm like, I am not a small town girl. I'm not doing that. And just some other places I'd never even heard of before. And then I got I actually went to the Unemployment Bureau and applied for a part-time position at Channel 5 WEWS, and it was for a floor crew position. And the people called me in, and they kept me there. I kid you not. They kept me there for like 8 hours talking to me. I talked to the floor crew director. I talked to the head of the editing department and some of the technical stuff. I talked to Alan Bush, who was some kind of manager there. I talked to Al Varga, who I think managed the editors. I talked to, what was his name? I think his name was Phil Parisi. He was the floor crew director. And they said they needed somebody in the floor crew because someone had left. Those people kept me there for 6 to 8 hours. So I knew I had this job. I was like feeling myself, thinking I had the job. They said, okay, give us a call back in 2 weeks and we'll let you know. And I said, great. And I felt like I did great with it. I was proud of the things I said. And I hung in there for 8 hours, no break, no water, no nothing, just watching how they do the shows. And I was so excited because they seemed to be really interested in me. I called them. We haven't made a decision yet. 2 weeks later, I called them again. We haven't made a decision yet. I called them again. We haven't made the decision yet. And then I called them again. They said, no, nothing yet. I'm like, what is going on? And then I knew somebody who worked there. And they told me what happened is the floor crew people decided to take the extra shift that they were missing and split it up among themselves. So they each got like an hour or 2 hours overtime every day. And so they decided they didn't hire anybody. They just took the overtime on their own. And when I found that, I was so disappointed because they should have just told me that they didn't hire anybody or that they weren't hiring me. But they didn't tell me that. I had to find out by calling people and finding out. So I was a little disappointed. And then I talked to my supervisor at Cleveland State in the registration center. Her name was Bonnie Braun. And she said, "Oh, Sandy, my husband, Eric, is the news director at Channel 5. I said, "Yes, I do know." I said, "But I wanted to get in on my own merit." She said, "Oh, please." She says, "I think you're great, and I'll tell my husband to see if he has anything, and he'll think you're great too. He should just let me handle this." So she called her husband. "Hey, Eric, I have a girl who's worked for me for about 2.5, 3 years in the registration center. She says she's very smart. She's very adaptable. She is getting her degree in communications. She's graduating in like a month or so. She says, you got anything for her? Can you bring her in for an interview?" And he says, "Yeah, tell her to come in on Wednesday, blah, 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 blah." So I did. And I went in for the interview, and he was talking to me and asking me questions, asking me about what I did. He looked at my resume, and I could tell he was just going through the motions. I said, "This man is going to hire me." So I guess what they say is true. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And sure enough, he hired me. Entry-level position in the editing department at Channel 5. So it was the second time that I had interviewed there, but the first time I was answering all the questions, saying the right thing, looking the part and all that, didn't mean a thing. They didn't hire me. But when I knew somebody, he just pulled me right in. So he started me right off in the editing department as a training editor. And so that first week I reported to work December 7th, 1981 at News Channel 5. And they gave me keys. I had keys to the gate to go into the building and keys to the back door. I was in heaven. Oh, my goodness. I was so proud. But they started me off at minimum wage. Do you have any idea what minimum wage in 1981 was?
Actually, I do have an idea of what it was because I was working at a radio station in Akron, Ohio with a degree in telecommunications, and they were paying me minimum wage.
Now, I don't know what it was for you, but what it was for me, and I think I'm giving them too much credit. It was $2.30 an hour, and I actually think it was $2.15. But I always bump it up to $2.30. I don't know why, because then somewhere in my mind that sounds better. But it was $2.30 an hour, but I actually really think it was $2.15. I had my college degree in my hand, and that's what they hired me for. No benefits, no health care, no nothing. And they even classified me as part-time, even though I did not work less than 36 hours any week I was there.
So they didn't want to pay you benefits?
No, they didn't pay me benefits. And the thing is, in the editing department, they did that to every person who was a member of the editing department. And all of us, and I think it was about 15 or 20, all of us were single and living at home with our parents, except for 2 people. And those 2 people were adults and married to each other. The head of the editing department, he was a grown man, probably in his mid to late 30s. And then he was dating one of the other editors who's a female, but they ended up getting married, and they were married to each other when I arrived there. And so they were the only 2 who weren't living at home with their parents because they were grown people living with each other and married. Yeah. But they met at Channel 5.
And on top of everything else, Channel 5 was a non-union station.
Yes. It was not non-union all across the board. It was non-union in editing where I was. Now, so the photographers were in IATSE. I think it was IATSE 666 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So certain departments were not unionized, and my editing department was not unionized. They knew they could take advantage of 20-somethings just getting out of college and stuff, and so they did that. So it was a non-union station in some of the areas.
Okay, so we have that in common too. We both came to the station for interviews that weren't really intended to lead anywhere. You know, right. I got to tell you about Channel 3. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, but I, like you, was kind of trying to get in all these different places, and I went to Channel 3. The news director, and I can't even remember his name, but he met me the day of my interview. He met me on his way out of the building.
Okay.
He took
you mean out of the building permanently or just leaving for the day?
No, just leaving for wherever he was going.
Yeah.
He met me at the door. He took my resume. He folded it up. He put it in his pocket. And basically he said, look, this is a top 10 market in the United States. I can get talent from anywhere. And he didn't say it in these words, but what he really said was, I don't need you.
Wow.
And he, this was probably I think I might have been at WERE at the time. I can't even remember the exact time of it. But my story, Sandy, is I tried to get in at 3, I tried to get in at 5, and I tried to get in at 8. And after all 3 times being rejected, I said, I've had enough of this. And I lost my desire to be an anchor person at any TV station in Cleveland. And then after that, I ended up doing a television show at Channel 19 called Down to Business.
Wow.
Barry Riley reached out to me, and
I'm Barry Riley.
Yeah, well, Barry Riley put me on because I was doing a show called Reflections, A Moment in Music History. That was a 2-minute program that aired on the major urban stations across the state. It's sponsored by the Ohio Lottery. So Barry had me doing that show for him, and then he called me in and said, hey, we're going to do this TV show. I would like for you to produce. And so I was producing segments, and I had a Canon L1 camera. I was going out and shooting video and putting my segments together. So I got the quote unquote anchor experience, but it was business news, minority business news, we called it back then. But yeah, that's my Cleveland television history.
Wow, that is so. You know what? I have no idea where Barry is. I haven't seen him in decades. I don't remember how I met him, but I know Barry Riley.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why he didn't ask me to do one of his shows. Because I do know that he became a producer, was producing content. But I don't remember how we met, but I do know him.
Yes. Well, I think I spoke to him maybe like a couple of years ago. I think he's still around. I don't think he's gone anywhere. Whatever he's doing, he's making some big money.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a pretty sharp guy. That is so funny, Barry White. I had no idea you had done all that, Vince. Now here's the thing. I did want to be an anchor woman, but I knew I was a natural reporter. And then they always say that you should dress for the job you want, not the one you have. So I was coming in every day like to the nines. And so a lot of times when people would come in from other stations to use our equipment or to do something that was of a national story based in Cleveland, like stuff with the Indians, stuff with the teams doing well in sports, a lot of big stories that we had here. A lot of big stories. I can't even think of a lot of them now. But we had a lot of huge stories that broke in Cleveland. And Cleveland was the 9th television market when I started in it. And I started, like I said, in December 7th, 1981, 40 years of the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, a day of infamy. I should have known, because that business really made me grow up. And I was never really an immature person anyway. But it was just the things you had to do, working the overtime, coming in on your off day because Dorothy full-time took a turn for the worse. We edited her obituary video quite a few years before she actually passed. But every time she got sick or went to the hospital, we would come in and update it just in case. And it never really aired until after I had left Channel 5 and went to Channel 8. But I remember I was in the beauty shop getting my hair done, and I got an emergency call. I think my parents may have called me or something. Hey, Channel 5 needs you to come in. They said, looking for you. They got to update the Dorothy video. I'm like, what? I'm at the hairdresser. They said it's important. You got to come. So I left with wet hair and went and worked on the Dorothy obituary.
Isn't that something?
That she passed away that day, but we did update it, and we kept it until we finally had to use it. Yeah.
All right. We're going to transition from Channel 5 to Channel 8 since you just brought it up, because I'm really anxious to hear about that, and I'll share my experience there as well. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is media professional Sandy Scott. This is 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. We'll be back.
WOVU 95.9 thrives daily to provide a positive forum for discussion of community issues and opportunities. Provide a creative platform for every segment of our community. Produce and distribute entertaining and uplifting cultural, educational, and artistic programming. Produce and distribute local community news, information, and public service announcements. Provide a platform for the live coverage of local community and school sports. Provide a portal for outsiders to rediscover the Forgotten Triangle and its potential. Provide media education and training to participating members of the community. Make no mistake, WOVU 95.9, Our Voices United, a solution-driven radio station.
In an ideal world, every neighborhood, no matter where a kid lives, no matter their background, they can choose any school they can go to and guarantee that they have high-quality options. And we've already started to do this work. And, there are pockets of excellence throughout our system. That's what the future looks like.
This message has been brought to you by Cleveland Metropolitan School District and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Welcome back. Open Door with Vince Robinson. Sandy Scott, media professional, worked at Channel 5, and she had to leave the hairdresser to get to the station to edit Dorothy Fuldheim's obituary video. She got the job done. But eventually, you went to another TV station. So tell us how that happened.
Wow, that actually happened out of frustration. I had been promoted a couple of times at Channel 5, but I definitely hit the ceiling, the glass ceiling. And I kept applying for producer jobs and other jobs, and they just were not trying to promote me. And then they said, well, we kind of like you where you're at because you're really good at what you do. But one thing I can say that Channel 5 did for me, they recognized that I looked good every day when I came to work. And they also recognized that I had a good voice. And they also recognized that I had a nose for news because I was the editor of my high school newspaper in my senior year. And I had written for it 3 years before that. And I did win a scholarship for writing. It was given to me by the Roundtable Journalism group. And but anyway, getting back to the Channel 5 part of this, it was frustration. I really wanted to become a producer. I just wanted to be promoted. I wanted to move on. I wanted to be a reporter. I wanted to be an anchor woman, but I was being blocked. They just, didn't want to allow me to pursue that. So I had applied to be a producer at Channel 5 like 4 times. And each time they turned me down and they hired somebody with less experience, and then I had to train them. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. How am I training somebody to be a producer when you've never paid me to be a producer? They never paid me to be a producer, but I had produced some things. I had worked with Linda Dukes Campbell in the Public Relations Department or Public Affairs Department, and I also worked with Gwendolyn Rice, who were working in the Public Affairs Department, and they needed to put together our community, a community culture and arts program. And I helped them with that. We built a program out of my ideas, and it worked, and they really thanked me profusely. So I was so frustrated at Channel 5 that I angrily picked up the phone one day and I asked a colleague who used to work at 5 named Lynn Zeeley. I said, hey, patch me into Virgil Dominic. I want to apply for a job there. And she says, yeah. I says, yes. I want to talk to him now. So I'm mad. I said, Channel 5 has disrespected me for the last time. I'm done. I'm leaving. So she said, okay. She patched me through to Virgil Dominic. He answered the phone. I said, hello, Mr. Dominic. My name is Sandy Scott. I work in television at Channel 5 right now. I've been here almost 5 years, and I would like to come in and interview with you to see what opportunities you have for a hardworking, bright person. And he said, wow, what is your name? I said, Sandy Scott. He said, can you come in this Wednesday? I said, yes, sir. I said, but can we make it like before 2:00? Because I'm scheduled to be at work at 3. So I would like to come like around lunchtime if that's okay with you. He says, yes. He says around noon would be fine. And so I got the interview with Virgil Dominic. I went in and I applied and I got the job. Virgil actually hired me. And then they let me talk to the news director at the time, who was a woman named Phyllis Quayle, and they hired me, and it was great. I got I think I got an increase in pay automatically of about $7,000 up a year, which was great, from my $2.30 an hour. And it was just fun. So I was really excited about making the jump from 5 to 8. And 8 gave me a lot of opportunities because at 8 I was classified not just as a video editor, I was classified as a technician, more like an engineer. So I was taught how to bring in live shot feeds, how to record CNN News Source, which is one of our news partners. We often gave CNN our stories, and they would give us permission to record and use their feeds. And we also would get stuff from Fox, CBS at first affiliates, and then Fox, because when I started at Channel 8 WJW, I started in October of 1986, and it was CBS then. But in 1994, it switched over to Fox. So the technology pretty much stayed the same, but we had different network affiliation. And that was hard. That was a hard swing to pull off because as a CBS affiliate, we were number one in a lot of areas in entertainment programming, I think in afternoon soap operas and in news. But then we took a big fall when we became Fox because we weren't really a network. Fox wasn't really a network when we first started. It was like an anomaly. And then we had The Simpsons and all that kind of stuff. So it took us a while to get used to being Fox because as CBS, we were number one. And as Fox, we were just some entity that people didn't even know how to classify. But that's what happened. And then also at Channel 8, I was trained how to do audio. I was trained how to do master control. Master control is where you look at all of the systems of the TV station, the audio, the video, the shading, even the temperature of the building and the security cameras, all of that. You would have to do the live EMS alerts, put those on the air and everything. And you also had to roll the commercials. So I got a lot of technical experience and training at Channel 8. And I also got the opportunity to work on a series called The State of Black Cleveland, which involved almost every black reporter and videotape technician. Not every single one, but most of them. People like Wayne Dawson, Herb Thomas, may he rest in peace, Willard Shepard, Eleanor Hayes, Rick Young, and I was the editor. It was 14 pieces. I did 8 of the 14. Richard Zoom Scott did like 4 of the 14, and then Kelvin McGee did 2. And so that was 14 pieces all together. And we ended up entering that for an Emmy, and I won an Emmy for that work that I did on that series called The State of Black Cleveland, dealing with health, spirituality, job opportunities, education, just about every entity or phase of a group's life we went into.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you know, I'm kind of regretful that I didn't have a friend named Lynn Zealy because I had an interview scheduled with Virgil Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
And I came in and I was there early and I, checked in with the receptionist, told her who I was, why I was there. And I sat there and nobody ever called me to the interview.
Wow.
And then they realized that I was there for that. And it was like the interview was scheduled for 1:00. And at 10 minutes after 1, I was told that basically the interview wasn't going to happen.
Wow.
So I left there. But Wayne Dawson is a friend of mine. We actually had classes together at Kent State. He and Richard Zoom Scott, we were all there at the same time. So when Wayne left Kent, he left a year before I did because, I was on the 5-year plan instead of the 4-year plan. So he left a year before I did. When he left, he had a job at WKNT radio, and he was doing radio news, and he was covering city council meetings. And so I got his job, and it was boring work. I covered Stowe City Council, Talmadge City Council. It wasn't much experience. So when I left Kent, and I went to Akron and got another job, Thanks to Wayne, I got the job at WKNT because they needed a black person.
Mm-hmm.
So I replaced the black person who left. I got to Akron. I was the only black reporter on the staff.
Wow.
And then they changed the format of the station and eliminated my position. And that's what brought me to Cleveland. I ended up working at WJMO, and guess who my boss was? Linda Dukes Campbell.
Oh my goodness, this is crazy.
It is crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy. And we're just finding out all this stuff about each other. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So
yeah. I just called Linda Dukes Campbell I'm gonna say it was about a month ago. I just wanted to catch up with her because she's such a classy, sophisticated woman.
Yeah.
Just love her. Just good people.
Yep.
Wow.
And I worked with Maureen Bailey.
Oh yeah. Now, you know what's interesting about Maureen Bailey Frater?
Mm-hmm.
Maureen Bailey Frater? Maureen and I graduated from John Adams, same class, same year. And we didn't know each other in school very well, but we knew of each other because I believe she did write for the newspaper or peeked at it or something. I think she did something at the newspaper because I basically worked on the John Adams Journal for I think all of my years at Adams, which could have been 4. I think I started out as just a reporter, and then I became like the editorial page editor. Then I became like a creative writing editor, and then I became the editor-in-chief my senior year. And that's how I won the scholarship that I applied for, because you had to have written for your high school newspaper or something, and I had, and I was also the editor. So the Martha Holding Jennings organization only gave 2 scholarships away. One was for, I don't know what their rules were, but they had a male winner and they had me. So I think they were trying to pick a male and a female. And the male who won, he went to Charles Brush High School, and I was from Adams. And my picture was in the Plain Dealer, and I think the Column Post and everything. And they slugged me underneath the picture as Miss Holloway, which was my maiden name then. So I hadn't yet met and married, but I was pretty proud of that. I might still have that clipping here somewhere, maybe.
Yes.
But that was great. I cannot believe how our careers have intersected. That is just wild.
Yes, and remember, born on the same day.
Born on the same day. Oh, my goodness. Oh, you know what about that thing? I do believe that there is some credibility in the way the stars and the sun move and stuff like that and all that. I do. But I also believe in God and Jesus, and I feel like God created all heaven and earth, so why wouldn't they affect you and how you move and who you are and your personality?
Mm-hmm.
I don't lean on horoscopes, but I find it slightly interesting. But the funny thing about it is that people do seem to have the characteristics that are associated with how the zodiac moves and all of that. And I asked once when I was in which newsroom, I think it was WKYC Channel 3, because I did work there too. I was an assignment editor there, and I also was an assignment editor at Channel 5. I didn't mention that before. But I said, hey, how many Aries are in the room? Do you know like a full third or half of the newsroom raised their hand? That was shocking.
That's amazing.
I mean, a lot of people like Ramona Robinson is an Aries. I can't even remember everybody else, but I remember she was one. But it was a lot of people.
Okay, so now you dropped another one on me. You worked at 5, you worked at 8, and you also worked at 3.
Yes, I did.
And I think you probably had some involvement in print media as well.
Actually, surprisingly, no.
Okay.
Even though that's what I started at. I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. But I got behind the scenes in TV and I just got dazzled by it.
Okay. Well,
there was
probably more money in television than there was in print journalism anyway, especially if you're talking about a place like the Call and Post. But we're going to put that on hold and we're going to come back to it because, again, the clock flies when we start these conversations. Trust me.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is media professional Sandy Scott. 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. We'll be back.
Academics to me, it means preserving myself, applying myself, and holding myself accountable for my goals.
4.06 for GPA.
Being focused on academics really means self-discipline to me. CMSD offered me just about everything. I think that's what makes a good scholar, is being exposed to a bunch of different environments.
This is much of a celebration for each of you.
Seeing an end goal can make you be proud of yourself and your achievements that you've overcome.
This message has been brought to you by Cleveland Metropolitan School District and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
Here at 95.9, we are committed to inclusion, outreach, education, transparency, accuracy, and accountability for us, by us, Our Voices United, WOVU, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
We're back. Final segment of Open Door with Vince Robinson and the conversation with my guest, Sandy Scott. She told me that she worked at Channel 5. She told me that she worked at Channel 8, and then she just happened to toss in there that she was an assignment editor and she worked at Channel 3. So what happened that brought you to Channel 3?
Wowzy, wow. What happened is I was at 8, and I had been there 14 years, pretty much. And I was doing a lot of technical stuff, but I really wanted to be a reporter. I did. And then I even got a little bit more into the managerial stuff at 8 too, because I became like what do they call them? They call them a show manager, where you manage certain shows like the noon show or the 5 o'clock show, the 6 o'clock show, 11 o'clock show. And I did get a considerable raise when they gave me that position, but it wasn't really feeding my soul. I mean, I liked it, but it wasn't feeding my soul, because I am a creative person. I am a business person. I can handle business. A lot of people have wanted me to manage their companies, and people still invite me and ask me to do it now. But I am a creative person. I really had kind of sublimated that side of myself. But I have to say, as a videotape editor, it was creative because I got to pick the shots and the sound sometimes. Sometimes the reporter was just too busy. Now, Sandy, I know what you're doing here. Just do it. I'm like, okay. And he says, wow, you really made a silk purse out of a sow's ear with that. And I love being able to be creative, to look at the pictures. So it's really like filmmaking that videotape editing was. And I started, it was 3/4 inch tapes to like some kind of SX beta, and then digital beta and whatever, and then to like bins and Adobe, whatever, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I just wasn't feeling fulfilled at 8. So I applied, even though I didn't want the job, at Channel 5 again as a manager. They were looking for a manager to manage their editing department. And I'm going to tell you, Vince, I did not want that job. But I was trying to shake my career up. I was also trying to see what my market value was. So I applied for the job, but I really didn't want it. And then the manager at the time who was interviewing was Rod Ingram. Now, what was great about Rod is that Rod started at Channel 5 as a part-time employee. And he went and got a financial degree and a business degree, and he ended up becoming the station, I think he was the station operations manager or something like that. That's pretty close to his title. And so he called me and asked me to apply for the job because he remembered me. And then I came over and interviewed with him. He said, well, one thing I remember about you, everybody liked you. Everybody spoke well of you. He said, and you always looked me right in the eye and said hello, even though I was a part-timer. He says, I just liked you. He says, everything about you. He said, you were classy, you're smart, people always spoke well of you. He said, so I wanted you to come and apply for this job. And I said, as what? He said, as the chief editor. And I said, what? So the department that I started out as a recent Cleveland State graduate with no real experience, except for the few little Super 8 films I edited at Cleveland State, he wanted me to manage the 14-person department. And I was like, wow, which is an honor to be that respected. But I did not want that job. I didn't. I was making good money at Channel 8. I was in the high five figures. And if anybody really wants to know, it was about $60,000 a year. And that was great money for me. I had survived a divorce. And I just didn't want the job that Channel 5 was offering because I didn't want the stress of it. I felt like even though I wasn't being creatively massaged at Channel 8, I just applied for the job and more for the practice of interviewing. I was going to NABJ convention, which was in, where was that? I don't know. I don't even remember where it was, but might have been in Phoenix, might have been in DC. But I went and got a lot of nibbles. I circulated a tape. A lot of people told me I definitely had presence. They said they liked my voice. They liked my diction. They even liked the way I look. And I was wearing long braids at the time. And, you know, that really wasn't quite accepted then. I believe that would have been, it was around 2000. It was around 2000. And I had long braids. And this one headhunter who happened to be a white gentleman, he'd been a headhunter for like 20, 30 years. He says, you know what? I want you to work on a couple more tapes. And then I want you to send me another tape in about a year. He said, you definitely have presence. He said, you have star presence. He said, I like your eyes. He says, I like your diction, but there's a couple of regional things that you said, you know, certain words I said. He said, but I really do think you got potential, and I want you to do another tape and send it to me. So that was encouraging. I came back, and I'm thinking about what this headhunter has said to me about being a reporter, because I still wanted to be a reporter. Lo and behold, Channel 5 called and said, hey, have you thought about our job offer? I said, no. And he said, why? I said, well, I just decided that I really wanted to go on camera. They says, oh, you got way too much experience to be doing that now. They says, you could be managing like a whole station. We want you to come and manage our editing department. I says, well, no, I don't think I really want to do that. And he said, come in and talk to me again. We'll make it worth your while. So I had given them a list of things that I thought was ridiculous for me to ask for. You know, I asked for way more money than I wanted and all this stuff. And guess what?
They gave it to you.
The offer. I went, oh my gosh. But I still didn't want the job. I still didn't want it. And so then he said, I really got to have you in this position. I says, why? He says, because you are it. He said, I searched all over the country. He said, first of all, you have name recognition here. You have respect. You have the experience. A lot of people know you and they like you, and they got excited when I said your name. He says, and you got to do it. He said, and if you do it today, if you say you'll do it today, he said, I'll throw in 2 pairs of $150 tickets to the Browns dinner at the whatever the arena is called now. And he says, and you can go to this dinner and blah, 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 and bring a guest and sit with us and something like that. I said, well, I can't do that. He says, why? I said, because I still work for Channel 8. I can't do that. And he said, yes, you can. I did it, and it didn't work out. I was being worked from day to night, 12 hours. I was having eye twitching, chest pains, stuff like that, because it was very volatile, because the experience level was crazy. We had people who had only had a year experience and people who had 25 years experience. When that 25-year experienced person was gone, it was havoc. I used to have to roll up my sleeves and go take her editing position and edit for the day. So it's crazy. I went back to Channel 5. I only stayed 6 months, because if I stayed, I would have died of a heart attack from the stress. We're having meetings all day long. From the time I came in at 8 o'clock to the end, it was too much. I ended up working 12 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours. Next thing I know, I was there for like 12, 13 hours every day. I was getting absolutely no sleep. I said, this is miserable. I don't like it. And I quit after 6 months. I turned in my resignation. They were sad. They hated to lose me. They said, but you were so great. I said, yeah, but I was giving you everything, including the blood. And I said, if you paid me $2 million, I wouldn't want this job. So I know I have to go. So I left. I took a 4-month vacation, went to California, saw my sister in California, thought about it. And I applied for a bunch of jobs. I was trying to get out of business. I applied at banking jobs. I would get a couple of interviews, but they said, no, we don't want you. Part of it was that the person who interviewed me at the banking job, which was in B&A, I was older than she was, and she was the head of the department. She was 24 years old. I said, this lady's not going to hire me. She's intimidated, I can tell. And I ended up applying for a job at Channel 3, which was kind of beneath my pay experience, but I did it anyway because I said, well, it'd be great to work for 3 stations in the city of Cleveland. And they called me and said, hey, we want to offer you the job. And I said, well, what is it? They said, assignment editor. That's why I've been at before. I was assignment editor at Channel 5. They said, well, you'd be working with us. There's only 8 assignment editors here, a weekday, weeknight, and weekends. And we want to groom you for the weekend. I said, well, you wouldn't be grooming me because I've done it before. It was a long time ago, but I did do it. And they says, well, you have the job. I said, what does it pay? Oh, it pays like $15,700, but it's only part-time. So they presented it like it was $15,700 a year, which was a massive pay cut for me. But they said, it's only part-time. It's only 20 hours a week. I thought, cool, I'll do it because I'm thinking I'm going to have another job anyway. Well, as it worked out, it wasn't $15,700 for 20 hours a week. It was a lot less than that. And I had to be in a union and pay union dues. So you got to read the fine print. You got to read the fine print. You got to read the fine print. And you got to get your offers in writing because people can be kind of interesting with stuff.
I'm not going to say any names, but somebody told me $14,000 a year. And the first day on the job, I asked and they said, no, I said 12. I'm like, really? Yep, it happens. Yeah. I hear exactly what you're saying.
And it happened to me. And here's the thing. At the time that I was hired at WKYC Channel 3, I was the president of the Cleveland chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. I was on the board of NATAS, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And I was also the director of the Urban Journalism Workshop, which has trained over 200 high school students from all over Northeastern Ohio how to be writers, reporters, and how to visually tell their stories. I was doing all that, and I was making...
They were treating you like a slave, Sandy.
Yeah, they were. And I was 44 when I started there, and it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And they didn't want to make me business cards either, but they did. But it was crazy. But I stayed there for 5 years. And then that gave me my 25 years in television, and I dropped the mic on them in December because I told them, if I work another Christmas or Christmas Eve here, I'm leaving. And I meant it. And they challenged me, and I left. I gave them 3 weeks' notice, but I left. So my last day in television was like December 23rd, 2006. And I went to radio from there.
Okay. So 2006, 2024, a lot has happened. And we only have a minute left.
Well, I can tell you right quickly what I did.
Okay.
After I left television, I got into radio. Actually, I got into acting, community theater acting. I did my first play in 2007 at East Cleveland Community Theater, and I ended up doing 3 plays there. The last one was in 2019. It was called The Old Settler. And in between that, I got into radio. I was doing internet radio, and I also did terrestrial radio for Metro Networks. I was a traffic reporter from 2005, which overlapped with Channel 3, to 2008. And I was on the air at WCPN 90.3, WKKY in Geneva, WZAK 93.1, and also 92.3 The Fan at the time. So that was it. So I did radio and stuff like that.
Wow.
So that's it.
That's quite a career. And now you are doing what?
Now I'm looking for all kinds of opportunity. I do a lot of nonprofit work. I work for my church. I sing in my church choir. I'm a pretty voracious karaoke singer. I host programs for different nonprofits, sometimes for the ovarian cancer luncheon that my brother-in-law sponsors, George Yarbrough, and my sister Cecilia Yarbrough, his wife, host that every last Saturday of September. I've been their MC and also their fashion announcer for the fashion shows that they have. And, I'm doing so many things right now, I can't even keep up with it all. I have 2 interviews this week that I'm doing, not for jobs, but for one's coming up for Spectrum TV.
Okay.
And, yeah.
All right. Well, once again, 1 degree of separation. I worked with George Yarbrough at WERE. And his brother used to cut my hair. This is amazing. Sandy, it has been a great conversation, and I want to wish you success in all the endeavors that you have. I know we just scratched the surface. You mentioned singing. You told me earlier you do photography. You're one of those folks who are gifted to be able to handle those technical things like editing. So you got a huge skill set there. You got a huge toolbox, and I know that the Creator is going to give you every opportunity to use your tools. Thanks for joining us on Open Door.
Thank you, Vince. It's been great.
All right. And to those of you who are listening, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace.